Hello everyone, and welcome. And this week for these meditation sessions, I'm offering you a little exercise that you can include as part of your meditation that corresponds to the later teaching in the Dharma on the fourth foundation of mindfulness. And so there's five of them, 5 exercises there. So giving a little taste of it perhaps for each day. And so yesterday and the idea was to notice desires operating whenever you were distracted by thoughts. Today, whenever you get distracted, and whenever you get concerned with something, even if it's happening in the present moment, that you somehow interrupt the flow of your ongoing contact with the present moment as it unfolds, as it develops. If you start having thinking about or commentary about what's happening, in all these regards, distracted thoughts, commentary, being stuck on certain emotions perhaps, the basic mindfulness practice is to have clear recognition of that, clear mindfulness, hold that in awareness, without making it a problem, without being critical of it, if anything, to be kind. And just be aware, clearly aware that it's there. And then once you've recognized it well enough, if it's no longer compelling or strong, you can come back and continue with your breathing. Today's exercise is that has to do with the idea that one of the primary catalysts for losing our connection to the present moment is concern with me, myself, and mine. What we call sometimes selfing. We take things and define ourselves by them, or define them as my thing, and even something as simple as saying my pain is different than saying the pain. And there's a little act of selfing, a little bit of identification with the pain. Add the seemingly innocent word my to it. The thoughts you have, chances are that you're one of the characters of it, or it somehow concerns you. And so to recognize the self-concern that's there. And so the word you could use, if you'd like, is selfing. There is selfing. And to please do that without any condemnation or criticism or disappointment. It's an all too human phenomena that human minds will identify, make self, construct selves, appropriate things for themselves, assume that things are mine. All these kinds of things that we do, and sometimes it's kind of innocent, but it also is the foundation for all kinds of ways in which we end up suffering, end up challenged in this life. So it's a helpful thing to see, to recognize it when it happens. So when you say, if you do the word selfing, or I, or my, or me, or something, it's a little note to recognize that it's happening. Do so kindly. Do so caringly, like you care for yourself. Or an alternative to that is to be slightly amused. There it is again. Wow. And it might be very interesting for you to kind of recognize all the ways and the many ways and the frequency in which the things that distract you from the breath, from the present moment, are somehow related to self. Me, myself, and mine. And if this doesn't make so much sense for you, you're welcome just to ignore it. But it might be an interesting exercise. So assuming a meditation posture, and lowering your gaze to have relaxed eyes, not really focusing on anything in particular, soft eyes, and gently closing your eyes. And then taking a few long, slow, deep breaths. as if you have all the time in the world to leisurely breathe deeply and appreciate each breath, each inhale, each exhale. And letting your breathing return to normal. And noticing the rhythm of the body's breathing in and breathing out. And wherever in your body you most clearly experience that rhythm, let your attention, let yourself familiarize yourself with those sensations, that experience. And then as you exhale, to relax. Maybe relax the muscles of the face. Relax the shoulders. Relax the belly. Relax your butt and your legs so they settle into your sitting place. And then settling into the body's experience of breathing. Again, with the simple rhythm of breathing. And the idea is to be as simple as possible. Not using the experience of breathing to reinforce ideas of self. Just the simple experience of the rhythm of breathing in and out, a rhythm you share with all breathing creatures. That's been going on for millions of years, breathing in and breathing out. And will continue long after you're gone. And now you're participating in this shared common experience of breathing in and breathing out. Center yourself on your breathing. And if you get distracted or caught up in something, notice how that might be related to self-concern, self-referencing. And then kindly, gently recognize it as selfing. And then begin again with your breathing. If you recognize selfing, see if you can recognize it with a light touch, not making it a big deal. In doing so, perhaps experience a teeny bit of freedom from the ongoing selfing, just through recognizing it, stepping back, holding it lightly, and then beginning again with your breathing. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, perhaps to recognize that the human, all too human concern with self, with oneself, is quite common, normal in many ways, but also it's the seat, it's the source for a tremendous amount of confusion and desires and aversions and pain, hurt and suffering. For many people, so the self is a complicated, difficult topic. Sometimes with self-criticism, sometimes with kind of self-assertion, which leads to frustration and difficulties. To recognize the tremendous amount of suffering that there exists in this world because of how people are caught up in conceit and identification. And to end this sitting and appreciating the challenges that this brings to people, and to maybe allow yourself to feel care and compassion for the challenges and difficulties that people have, and to wish them well, to wish all of us success in finding our way through beyond the suffering based on self and selfing conceit. May all beings be happy without needing to reinforce or build up the self. May all beings be safe without needing to defend, protect, or let get hurt the concepts, ideas they have of who they are. May all beings be peaceful, free of self-preoccupation, and may all beings be free of the stickiness, the traps that are set with the self-concern, self-preoccupation. And may we support all beings to be free from the suffering of selfing by overcoming some of our own attachment to this area. May all beings be happy and free. So today I continue the discussion about the fourth foundation of mindfulness. And there are 5 different areas to attend to in this foundation. Yesterday I talked about the hindrances, the 5 hindrances. Today will be what's called the 5 aggregates. Tomorrow the 6 sense doors. Then the 7 factors of awakening, and then the 4 noble truths. So all these wonderful lists. And there's a progression through them. And the progression from yesterday is that the hindrances are, we think of them as kind of what keeps us distracted in the world of desires and aversions, in our relationship to pleasure and pain and things of the world. The alternative word for sensual pleasure, the first one, that appears in the suttas is another list, same list, but with the word instead of sensual pleasures is avariciousness. So wanting to acquire, especially things of other people, or acquire things. And so it has a lot to do with our relationship to things and desires and pleasures, and kind of, you think of it a little bit that, kind of what the self can get, what the self cannot get, what the self wants and doesn't want. When that kind of desire settles down and quiets, then uh, we're more present for ourselves. We then at some point encounter the next layer of attachment, this layer of preoccupation that interferes with the deeper settling into peace. And that has to do around me, myself, and mine, self-concern, identification, where we take different parts of our psychophysical being and we hold on to that, or we assume or conceive of that as being, this is mine, this is me, and this is my true self. And so something as simple as seemingly innocent as saying, this is my hand. Now I've appropriated it as being mine, and in some sense it is, but when I say my hand, and then it's associated with me, and maybe I think my hand is the best hand in the world, or the worst kind of hand in the world. And so here I am holding it up in front of all of you, and if I'm attached to this is my hand, then I could be either completely proud of showing it off, or completely miserable that you're seeing this thing that's of mine. And so the idea of my hand can be innocent, but it can come along with a lot of baggage. That baggage is called selfing. Or it could be that rather than it's me, the hand is me. And so if someone brushes against it in a hard way, they're kind of offending me, because the hand is me. And so we're taking what's innocent enough, and assuming that this represents me as a person. Or I take my hand as being my true self. That's the essence of who I am, handness. And I'm not ready to argue with anyone, or I'm ready to insist that this is my handness, and I'll protect my hand at all costs. I don't want it to die or get old, and because that's essentially who I am. So maybe that's a silly example, but I'm hoping that you can apply this to yourself. That there's this action of selfing. In extreme forms, it takes the form of conceit, very strong attachment to self. It has a lot to do with identification. Not identifying who we are, if we're some simple way, a man, a woman, neither man or woman, trans, gender non-conforming, all kinds of other options. But if we get attached, there's a way of kind of leaning into it too much, holding on to it, and clinging and holding tight in such a way that as the vagaries of life encounter us, that it either challenges that deep attachment or reinforces it, and so there's selfing going on. So in the Buddha's teaching, then the idea is to be sensitive to the contraction or the stickiness or the resistance or the pushingness, the neediness that seems to be related to this idea of self. And it can be experienced very simply sometimes as a kind of contraction, a tightness, inner pressure. It can be experienced as a wanting, as a not wanting. It can be experienced as ideas that we swirl around in. And a lot of these selfing does in fact have to do with ideas and concepts we live in, sometimes so deep that we don't even see we're doing them. For example, if you come to a place where there's chairs, and and there's lots of chairs to sit in and lots of empty chairs, and maybe you're waiting at the doctor's office or something, and then you have to go to the bathroom. So you've been sitting in one chair for a long wait to see the doctor, and then you have to go to the bathroom, and you go to the bathroom, you come back, and lo and behold, someone's sitting in the same chair that you're sitting in. And the initial reaction, and how could they be sitting in my chair? And there's identification with the chair and me that might arouse anger that the person's sitting in it, while there's lots of other chairs around. And so this can happen in all kinds of small ways throughout the day. And so to begin being sensitive to this movement of selfing, that's possible where we're no longer, uh, uh, caught up in the more coarser or surface desires of wanting and not wanting, and the confusion that comes from that, the hindrances. And they're very interesting. What the Buddha wants us to do is to recognize in our simplest forms of experience the 5 different ways, 5 different kind of foundations for what he thinks is constructing a self. Sometimes it's the body, the form. Sometimes it's based on our feelings. Sometimes it's based on our ideas of things, our concepts. It's called perceptions in English, the 3rd aggregate. And sometimes that has to do with the stories we make up, the impulses, the intentions, the motivations, the opinions we have, the 4th aggregate. And the 5th one is consciousness, the idea that we can be aware, that we can know. Some people very strongly associate that with a feeling almost of emness, I am. And of course that's who I am. So these are different areas that people sometimes focus on in the construction of identity, in the construction of self, in the preoccupation with self. And you might do it as an exercise and spend it maybe today, maybe in, a period of time on each of these 5 aggregates, and see, how much self-concern is there around your body and what you look like, and bodily pleasure and displeasure, and how much preoccupation and selfing is connected to how you feel, your feelings. And, are you feeling happy or sad? All kinds of ways. And how much of preoccupation and selfing, self-concern about my opinions, my history, my story, my biography, my plans, my desires, and there's a whole kind of inner world of the world that we construct with our mind, and then consciousness. So these are the 5 aggregates. So this is where the Buddha wants us to look, but he wants us to look and see this for a particular reason, not to negotiate, not to abandon it, not to let go of it even, not to make a problem out of it, but to see it clearly, and to see it this way, to be quiet enough to see that each of these 5 areas, when we don't cling to them too much, or don't overlay our ideas on it too much, or our preoccupation, can be experienced as something which is flowing, something that's arising and passing, something that appears and disappears, something that's very inconstant, changing, fluxing, moving. And it's kind of like a river of our life. Our being is a river of changing sensations, experiences, thoughts, emotions. And the idea is to relax into that river and float, or be massaged by it, or settle in. And the attachment to self and selfing is like, taking a bucket of that water out, and sometimes freezing it and saving it for the future. But it's no longer the river. And so the idea is not so much to, attack or feel upset about the selfing that goes on, but rather to look more deeply and see that underneath the self-concern, can we notice how it takes us out of the flow of life, the movement of the present moment. If the present moment is a river, notice how it takes us out through retrospective thinking, through fantasy, through being caught up in conversations in our head, and and the and such things. So the 5 areas is the body, feelings, the basic simple concepts, ideas that we live by. The 4th one is the stories we live by, the more complicated constructions, mental constructions about our lives and motivations. And the 5th is consciousness. And you don't necessarily have to remember them all, but you might become sensitive to how much selfing goes on. I think for many people, a primary subject of, or main character of much of their thinking, and what fuels their thinking, is the self, is me, myself, and mine. We're kind of either center stage or somehow important in the thoughts, the concerns we have. And just watching the thought stream and recognizing how much self is in there, and selfing and ideas of self, is a fascinating study. And but to do this as this mindfulness exercise is to try to see it as selfing, but see it as a reification, a solidification of the ongoing river of life that we live in. And in doing so, start experiencing some freedom, some independence from those attachments to self. So, thank you. And I realize this week is a bit of a whirlwind tour of these 5 different areas for the 4th foundation. And but maybe hopefully it's useful to have a general sense, those of you who don't know, of these very important part of mindfulness practice. And maybe some other time we can go in some more depth with it, each of them. So thank you all very much.